Welcome back for another episode of the Happy at Work podcast with Laura, Tessa, and Michael.
Each week, we have thoughtful conversations with leaders, founders, and authors about happiness at work.
Tune in each Thursday for a new conversation. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Happy at Work podcast. And today we're really excited to welcome our guest, Jill Schulman, who is the author of The Bravery Effect. She is a bravery expert, also a Marine Corps veteran, and she also studied at the University of Pennsylvania and is a master. So she has a master's degree in applied positive psychology. Jill, welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to have this conversation.
And you have a really, really rich career history. Can you share with our guests your career journey? Where have you been and how did you end up becoming a bravery expert?
It's kind of an interesting story. So I'll tell you the quick version. I started my professional career as a United States Marine. So I ended up earning a full scholarship on the Marine Corps. So it was my opportunity to earn my degree. And I wanted to see more of the world than the little tiny town in Minnesota. So I went to the University of San Diego and studied. At the end of 4 years, I received my commission to be an officer in the Marine Corps and had an absolutely fascinating time. And that's where I started learning about bravery in the Marine Corps. Then I got out of the Marine Corps, and my little joke is my first job was blowing things up, like literally, because my Marines were in charge of demolitions, explosive ordnance disposal. And then I decided to sell drugs, the legal kind in the pharmaceutical industry. I had a recruiter that wanted me to interview with pharmaceutical companies. I was a little bit of a snob. I'm like, I'm a captain of Marines. I'm above sales. And what is this medical industry? I don't want to do that. And they were like, why don't you just practice your interviewing skills? So I did. And the second company I interviewed with, the hiring manager was a former Marine Corps officer. We clicked and I started that and I fell in love with science. This is when I started falling in love with science. As you obviously have to understand the science to have these in-depth conversations with doctors. So I did that for about 15 years, working in pharma, biotech, device, moved up, did very well. And then I just benefited so much as a leader from learning from others and going to leadership development courses. And I became obsessed with organizational development, industrial psychology. And then I also learned about positive psychology. So I was always reading everything. I decided to start my own company about 10 years ago. So I was doing the same thing, doing leadership development. It used to be internal to a company. I started doing it in my own company. And I was just getting to the point where I want to learn and develop. I kept helping my clients, and the companies create these environments where everyone's learning and growing. And I kind of got that little itch. So I went to Penn, and that's how I met you, Michael, at the alumni. And out of that program, as you know, you have to decide where are you going to take a deep dive in your research and when you write your capstone, and when you think of positive psychology, so many people that know me, they're like, you positive psychology, you're the tough girl Marine. And isn't positive psychology happyology? And I'm like, no, then I will correct the definition of what positive psychology is. But I became very interested in the A in PERMA that right? Of one of the ways that we can elevate our happiness and well-being is by accomplishing hard things. So I was looking into what holds people back. So I just became obsessed and took a deep dive and did the research on that and wrote the book. And now I'm just so excited on a mission to help people. I think so many amazing, talented people are controlled by fear that holds them back. And I want to help them overcome that so they can have a bigger impact at work and live a happier life.
That sounds amazing, Jill. And your book is called The Bravery Effect. And so I just want to ask the first question being, what is bravery? When you talk about what is bravery and when you talk about this fear that people have that really holds them back, can you just dig a little bit deeper into what you mean by those terms?
Yeah. So bravery is defined as taking voluntary action in the presence of fear toward a worthwhile goal. That's a definition I get from Dr. Cynthia Puri from Clemson, a leading bravery researcher. And that, when I learned about what bravery was, it actually didn't match up with what I thought bravery was before. When you think of someone who's brave, what do you think? What image comes in your mind? Like a firefighter?
A firefighter or someone who faces danger. a
Yeah.
Marine Corps officer, someone who
Yeah, and I just thought it was like the physical part, right? And when I studied bravery, I realized it is actually something that's much more of a broad character trait that everyone can learn the skill. So the two things that I learned about bravery that really kind of shook me at my core were bravery wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't just the physical bravery. It was, I mean, every one of us wants to take voluntary action in the presence of fear toward a worthy goal, right? And so I learned that bravery is for everyone. And I also learned that bravery is a skill that you can build like a muscle. And then that one part of the definition is it is not the absence of fear. It's actually taking a step on shaky knees, right? So I used to think people who are brave were just fearless. If you actually don't have any fear, you're not even being brave. So yeah, that's what the definition of bravery. It's something you're not born with it. It's something that you build, and you can build it over time. And this is drawn from psychology. There's things we can do in cognitive psychology, behavioral psychology, social psychology, things that we can do, evidence-based interventions that can help people build that bravery muscle.
I love what you just said, Jill, about if you don't have fear, you're not brave. It's like a prerequisite that you have the sense of fear. That is I don't know, that really is cool. Maybe let's go a little bit deeper because I love this topic so much. Let's talk a little bit maybe about what are the challenges that people face in this bravery journey, and maybe some specific things you've seen really work when people are trying to learn how to build that muscle of being brave.
Yeah. Well, I think the way it shows up, it's different for every person. So another thing about bravery, it is very personal. So what I am fearful of is different than what you're fearful of. Like I have no fear of getting on large stages and speaking because that's something I'm comfortable with. Other people would go into total panic, right? So it's very personal. But what I see in the workplace many times, the fear that holds people back this is the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear. So those are the fears, it's social fears that we see primarily in the workplace. And or the fear of uncertainty. So here's some specific examples. Maybe think of someone in the workplace where they've got an idea and they have a really good idea to solve a challenge and they want to share their idea. But there's that moment where they could share it and they think, I'm uncomfortable. I'm just going to step back and I'm not going to share my idea because I'm scared it'll be something that is not accepted or is going to be rejected. Another example is someone who is waiting until they're 100% ready and they have no more fear before they raise their hand for a promotion, right? So that's another fear that we see in the workplace. Or sometimes the fear of uncertainty as there's a change initiative. So what fear does is it paralyzes us and we don't take action. And this is not related to your question, but this is coming to mind. The reason I named the book The Bravery Effect is based on the work that I've done with my clients so far is we really look at what is the compounding effect on not just results, but on a person's career. If each opportunity they have to share their idea, to raise their hand for a promotion, or to embrace change, even though it's scary, what is the compound effect of someone in all those situations they decide to step back instead of step forward in the presence of fear? And I say the compound effect because, you think of like when you're saving for retirement, like you've got to keep saving every single month. And then over time, it grows exponentially. This is the same thing with bravery, right? Think of someone's impact at work and their career, for them to take ownership for their career, if they can learn to take that step forward, even though they're a little bit unsure. Or what would be the devastating impact to their career being pretty flat because they're always letting fear control them. So I don't know if that answers the question. But that's what comes to mind.
That's so interesting. I'm going to give you a real life example that happened 2 days ago, and ask for some advice. So I'm going to ask you for what would Jill do with the bravery effect? I was teaching an executive ed course, and we told the students for day 2 there's going to be a module on artificial intelligence, total beginner, and this was all salespeople. There was a lot of fear in the room, and a lot of them. It was interesting at the networking party. Everyone's just dropping AI terms all over the place, and you can tell they don't really know. And when we said, okay, now we're going to dig into the weeds and really get into AI, I knew there was a lot of fear in the room. The program started at 8 a.m. and we offered that at 7 a.m. we would have a total training wheels, super beginner. What does the letter A mean? What does the letter I mean? A complete beginner. There were 25 people registered in the class. One person came at 7 a.m. dug in, asked all the very beginner questions. He did great. And what could we have said to the other 23? Because I think they didn't come because they were afraid. They didn't know the
Mhm.
information. I think they were
Mhm.
afraid. What can people do who are afraid to make the step and show up at 7?
Yeah. So I'm gonna answer the way Cynthia Puri would answer, because she is the world's leading bravery researcher. She says one of the best ways to motivate people to take a step forward, even when they're scared, is to have them think about what would be the consequence if they don't take action. So this is like going to the future. Like if you don't choose to really learn about AI and how you can leverage it to have your best career, or you said it was sales executives in order to be the best salesperson, what would be the consequence if you didn't understand this? When you think about the risk or the consequence of not doing it, and then you amplify that, then the fear of not doing can motivate you to act. So it's about, a lot of people have a fear of doing something like, oh, this is scary. This is kind of unknown. So if you can amplify the consequences, the fear of not doing, that can motivate people to take action. That's what.
I love that. As a quick follow-up before I pass on to Tessa, what gets me to be brave is that consequence. I never thought of it that way, but
Mm,
it's regret. I would regret copping out, not trying. I would rather have pie on my face and just have my face in that mud puddle than be like, I never
right.
did it, because I would never stop beating myself up. Regret is what helps me be
Exactly.
brave.
It's about avoiding the pain of regret. You spot on. And I like to tell audiences, I tend to be kind of provocative. Like I'll say this, I'll say in all these little moments, you have a choice to take a step forward, even though there's fear there. And that's what I call, that's a brave step. And then, or you have a choice to take a step back and let the fear control you. And I'll ask the audience, what is that called? And they say cowering. So in those moments, we choose to cower. I'm not going to call someone a coward. I'm just saying the choice you made was to take a step back in the presence of fear versus taking a step forward. If you think about what is the goal, is I want to understand and leverage AI so that it helps my career. So another thing that comes to mind, but yes, it's the power of regret. And another, just a little psychological trick, is sometimes asking yourself, what is your future self? Imagine yourself 2 or 3 years from now. What would your future self tell you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. of what you should do? So you can get people to convince themselves, right? It's a great little psychological, trick there. Like, what does your future self want to do? Like when I don't want to get out of bed in the morning to go for a run, I'm like, what does my 6 p.m. Jill want me to do this morning? Should I press snooze, or do I want to get out of bed? So I use myself to coach myself to do it. So 2 little tricks. Yeah.
That's wonderful, and I have to do the same thing to get myself out of bed to go for a run almost every morning. I have another question, because a lot of what you're discussing also seems like there's some strong linkages to psychological safety. And so
Mm,
when we think about, as managers, when we're managing teams of people, and, with psychological safety, the fear is, are others going to judge me if I speak
mhm,
up, if I share my idea? Do I feel safe in this environment to do so? Or will people think, why would she bring that up? Or no, don't be an idiot.
mhm.
That's the whole idea. Those types of things. Well, first of all, what is the linkage with psych safety? Is it kind of one and the same, this bravery
Yeah.
effect with
Mhm,
psych safety? And what can we do as managers to create braver teams so that
mhm,
they are taking those calculated risks, and they are, really thinking about how they can innovate for the future because they're being brave. So how
mhm.
can managers manage that, do that?
I'm so glad you asked this question, because I talk about and I hear my clients talk about psychological safety all of the time. So if we think about the goal of psychological safety, it's not just for everyone to feel safe. The goal of psychological safety is to have candor, to have transparency so that everyone's sharing what they really feel. So if we think about really the goal of psychological safety, how do we create that? Now, I would say a majority of the responsibility to make people feel safe to speak up does fall on the leader. Let's look at Amy Edmondson's research from Harvard. Absolutely. I teach her stuff. I cite her stuff. Leaders have a responsibility to set the stage, tell people their voice is heard. Number 2, ask. So create the mechanisms to continually gather the information. And number 3, the leaders have to make sure they respond appropriately. So her data is sound. So still teach that. It's absolutely necessary. But I think many times we don't do enough as leaders in order to teach our people how to make their voice heard or how to speak up even when they're nervous. So the leaders that do the best job of creating psychological safety, there's still going to be people on their team, employees that still might feel a little bit nervous because they have a fear of speaking up. It might have been other companies before, or they're just more introverted in terms of their personality. So I feel like the missing piece for the goal of candor, transparency, and trust is we need to also teach our employees how to speak up, how to be brave in their communications. And this takes time. Wouldn't it be great if you just say, I want everyone to speak up. Just make sure you speak up and it's safe. But if someone doesn't know how, right? So teaching people how to be brave. And that's what I'm obsessed with, is how do you actually teach people to be brave, right? How do you create the rewiring of their brain so when people feel uncomfortable and feel the fear, they're actually going to be more apt to step forward. So I think that's a gap. I think in psychological safety, we should do all the things we're doing, but also give some resources and training to all employees to say, part of your job expectation is for you to speak up with questions you have, ideas or concerns. That's part of the job. And we're going to teach you the skill of how to do that so you become more comfortable speaking up.
Love the connection you're making with power and how power influences this topic. I'm curious, one of the things I get to do some cool work around culture. And so a lot of times I'm working with leadership teams. And I feel like there's a level of bravery that leaders have and they can teach their employees about. But I also feel like they have their own power dynamics many times with the CEO. And there are many times where I feel like the leaders aren't brave in pushing back and really questioning the CEO and really putting forward to the CEO ways that things need to change. And so it's a really interesting, to me, thing to observe, the politics that happen. So I'm curious about, there's this reading the room, understanding politics, and knowing how to navigate really complex things that happen and how that fits with bravery. Because to me, I get that there is an important role to play in understanding organizational dynamics and navigating that. But at some point, it feels like you're just playing the game and you're not pushing on things that need to be pushed on. So I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I do. And I get calls all the time. My clients are always asking, they're trying to create the dynamic and the culture within their team, but then they are struggling to push back when things. So I hear you. This is a real challenge. So this is where I think I get into more tactical training. People want to do the right thing. They want to push back, but they just don't know how. How am I going to say it? Is there going to be consequences if I challenge the boss? So this is where I came up with what I call, when you deliver that feedback or pushback, I say, just do it with poise. And what I mean by poise, and this is what I teach, especially senior leaders, I'm just start with your purpose and your pure intent, right? Because that way leaders feel safer. So it could be something like, hey, boss, you're the CEO. I'm one of the senior leaders. I want to have a conversation about something with you. And this is because I care so much about the company and our results. And I think the most responsible thing to do is for me to share something, an observation that I have. And I'm a little even nervous about doing this, but I just know that my intent is pure because I want to be helpful. Can I share something? So when I teach leaders how to do that little preamble, they're sharing their pure intent instead of just coming in and saying this is wrong, you're doing it wrong. You open with your pure intent and then ask permission, right? And that usually will set the right framework. So in my POISE model, P is purpose and permission. O is you as organizational psychologists, you know this stuff better than anyone else. Then describe the observed behavior or the observed, strategy that's being done. So make sure you're not judging it. It's just, here's an observation. And then here's the potential impact. So POI is just how you begin the conversation. And then S is seek to understand. This is just my point of view, CEO. I'm bringing you with great care, but I wanted to hear from you. And then the E is hopefully to enact a plan. So that's my POISE model that I bring to, all of my many teams and many senior leaders. And if someone's really nervous about pushing back, I'm like, okay, come up with your plan and how you're going to bring it up. And like anything that you're scared of, do a rehearsal, right? Sometimes we need to rehearse. Like if I've got a huge stage to speak on and they've asked me to talk about a topic that's a little different, I rehearse to become more confident. And this is part of bravery. Like, we need to practice the skill a couple times and feel a little bit stronger. So I would challenge those senior leaders in saying like, what is the right thing to do? What is the worthy goal? Right? I'm going back to my definition of bravery.
Yeah.
So the right thing to do is here. So right now you're experiencing fear. The brave thing to do is to take that voluntary action in the presence of fear in order to accomplish the goal. But let's do it in a way that's going to minimize some of what you fear, which is the risk of any type of consequences. And if you deliver it that way, and I get calls back and they're like, it worked all the time. So this is
That's
where I say
awesome.
like, yeah, let's teach them how, have them practice. And I'll even do it. I'm like, all right, let's just role play. And then sometimes they can say the right words, but you all know this because you teach this. Sometimes it's the tone or the body language. I'm like, all right, you're saying the right words, but you're coming across. So then I'm like, practice again. I'm like, okay, now everything about it is coming across as caring and neutral. You are ready to have the conversation. And then they do it.
Awesome.
So
That's so good.
I just want to quickly say I just had the biggest aha moment, because when I reflect back on my 30 years of professional experience, and I've worked for lots of dysfunctional organizations. I don't know if I should actually say that, but those that are kind of the most toxic environments really are led by people who lack bravery, and
Oh,
as a result, they overcompensate by strong arming people,
so
or
true.
just you just coming across in a way that is just kind of like, this way or the highway, rather than really being brave and being able to challenge and also to reflect and say, I think maybe something's not going as well, which is also brave, right? To admit when the plan is not working and we have to pivot.
Um,
I just, I literally have chills right now, because I do think, when I think back to a lot of the dysfunctional leaders that I've worked with in in the past, that's really kind of at the core, is their lack of bravery in order to, in their leadership. And it may come across as um, them strong arming or not creating
yeah.
psychologically safe environments or whatnot, but it's really because of their lack of, confidence in
Yeah.
their own insecurity. So that's, I think, such an important point when it comes to leadership, and haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, if in my book, I talk about the 3 ways of being brave, and what people are always surprised by. And when I had some beta readers, like the early readers, they were like, "Oh my gosh, the end of the book," because it's written as a parable. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I learned so much there." So I talk about brave relationships, and I go into what that means. If you want to be brave, because I have some men in my audience who are like, "I'm brave. Like, look at me. I'm big. I'm muscular. I do all that stuff." And then after they go through my talk, they're like, "Oh, I'm actually kind of a wimp in this area." But when we talk about brave relationships, I'm like, how comfortable are you admitting when you need help and asking for it? How brave are you to ask for feedback? How brave are you to not be the smartest person in the room and it not to be your idea? So that vulnerability piece. So we talk about how everyone should have a brave tribe around them, where you're always seeking feedback on how you can become better. And the reason I call it, bravery for a lot of different reasons, as people are moving up in their career, I say, like, who is someone who has accomplished what you want to accomplish, or maybe they're further along in their career? Are you brave enough to go up to them and say, like, I've watched your career progression and you've been so effective. I would love to ask you a couple questions so that I can learn and grow from you. Can I ask? So some people are too intimidated to go up to the senior leader, right? Just go ask them. And what we know in pro-social behavior is that person that you're asking for help, when they can help mentor someone that's young and ambitious, they get a bigger boost to their well-being than even I do. So be brave enough to go ask for advice and for help, but then you got to be brave enough to take it, right? And I love Adam Grant, and all the work that he does. But what I learned from him, and I don't think it's his research, but he cites the research. So I remember him saying it. I should figure out who actually did the research. But he says, if you just ask for feedback, hey, do you have any feedback for me? A lot of times you won't get it, especially if they're the leader in power. right? So you got to ask a different way. So just in general, it's asking the question, do you have any suggestions on how I can get even better as a leader? Or if you're asking up to your leader and mentor, I want to improve my level of impact and performance. So what are a couple suggestions for me to get to that next level? When you ask it that way, Adam Grant says, then people feel more comfortable sharing. But if you just say, do you have any feedback for me? A lot of people will think, I don't want to give them feedback. No, you're great. Everything, you're perfect. You're really effective. But if you ask for suggestions to get even better, then that usually gives people permission. And then you got to be brave enough to receive it.
I love these. I love these reframes, and I'm gonna ask another one. I'm gonna go off the deep end and see if you can
Okay. I love
handle
it.
this one for some friends I have. I've been spending some time in Buenos Aires to learn Spanish because I want to teach in Spanish. And you have to talk to people on the street, and you're going to mess it up.
Mhm.
It's going to be messy, and they might laugh at you or walk away. And I do it, but a lot of my friends in my class don't. So they know how to read, but they don't know how to talk,
Mm,
and they came to talk. What would you suggest for them to overcome the fear to
mm,
get on the street, be messy? How would you
mhm.
reframe for them?
Well, if you were that person, I would talk to them about making mistakes and those little failures that you're making. That is the absolute best thing that you want to go after for you to accelerate your growth and development. So this goes back to these terms that you've heard a billion times. Here's one of my stickers here. Comfort and growth do not coexist. So if you stay in your apartment hotel room, you're in Buenos Aires to learn how to speak. If you don't go out and speak, which makes you uncomfortable, you will not grow as much. So I want you to reframe this discomfort as something that is positive. Now, here, let me sprinkle in a little Marine Corps here. So when I was
Yeah.
in the Marine Corps, there was this phrase that we were always told, and I don't know that I appreciated it until now that I studied psychology, and it was embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. And now I'm like, from a psychological point of view, like that is so valid. So, I would remind your fellow students and saying like, I want you to embrace when it's really hard because those are the moments that you're going to be growing the very most. Whenever you choose to step back, like you've got this choice. I go back. Are you going to step forward into the discomfort to really learn and grow? Or are you going to take a step back, which we call cowering, right? It's your choice. But if you want the path to greater levels of growth, development, impact in your companies, and also life satisfaction, you've got to choose to be uncomfortable. So let's choose to embrace the suck. Let's choose to look at discomfort and even the little failures as like, these are the stepping stones to greatness, right? So I fail all the time because I lean in. I think we sometimes study like what we need. Right. So now that I've done all the research on bravery and stuff, now I'm just going for it, and I'm making mistakes along the way. And each time there's a little bit of a mistake, I just go, what did I learn from that? Right. As long as we look at the failure and go, all right, I didn't have a great conversation and I didn't like what didn't go well. Right. And just learn from it. And that's how we grow.
Before I pass on to Tess and Laura, I do this and I make a mess and it's messy. And the other day, before I came back to the US, I was being messy with my Spanish in Buenos Aires. And the person said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "The United States." And they said, "Thank you for respecting my culture and trying to learn my language." And I was like,
Mm,
whoa. I never thought that it was like a sign of respect. It is.
what? Oh,
It was really nice to be like, I'm glad I tried. I'm glad I
yeah.
tried. It was
And
messy, but they
they didn't
appreciated it.
They didn't care that you conjugated every verb correctly. They said, wow, you're from the US, and they probably have opinions of people from the US, and you're here and you're trying to talk in our language. Wow. So they're impressed by it. Yeah, I love it. That's a good reframe.
I love that too. And Michael, I have to say, I think you're very brave for the work you've been doing over the past 6 months living in a different country and learning the language. It's pretty
Absolutely.
amazing. But we are over time because I think we could talk about this topic all day long. So we'll have to invite you back, Jill. I really love the work that you're doing around bravery. I think it's one of those essential ingredients for great leadership. And congratulations on your book. And thank you so much for joining us at the Happy at Work podcast.
Yeah,
Well,
Jill,
thanks for having me. It's
Thank
so much fun. And we'll have to talk again because I have so much I can learn from all of you as well. And together, learning from one another, I got to model what I teach. So I've got a lot of questions and I'm sure I could learn a lot from all of you.
We would love to have you back after the book's been out for a while to get the feedback. And your book is so timely. So many people right now are living in fear, and it's a waste of a potentially amazing life. With bravery, your life matters more. So thank you for writing the book.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks so much.
It took some bravery to write the book.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Jill.
you.
Okay. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to hear future episodes, be sure to subscribe to the Happy at Work podcast and leave us a review with your thoughts.
Are you interested in speaking on a future episode or want to collaborate with us? Let us know. You can send us an email at admin@happyatworkpodcast.com.
And lastly, follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter for even more happiness. See you soon.